Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this 18th seminar for TIE. I would also like to mention quickly about the TIE Women Global Pitch that is taking place in the MENA region right now. Please visit our website, dubai.thai.org, and you will be able to apply for the prize, which is $100,000 for the winner and the competition, which is open across the MENA region. TIE will be helping women with their business plan, mentoring them, bringing them up, and finally there will be a competition in December. Yeah. And these unprecedented times, I'm happy to see that everyone is embracing technology, changing plans, pivoting, and making things happen. Just a quick introduction of Mr. Pankaj Jain. Pankaj is a friend and a colleague. In fact, I was one of the first people that Pankaj met when he came into Dubai. He's a success. Pankaj is a successful team at Ask Pankaj, working as a tax advisor with a rich tax litigation experience for over 16 years across India, Europe, UAE. Pankaj specializes in the entire gamut of VAT, GST, excise duty, customs, transfer pricing, and corporate tax. Today's topic is economic substance regulations. This is basically to make sure that the UAE company structures are not being misused for the purposes of tax avoidance. There isn't any corporate tax in the UAE yet, but they want to make sure that the regulatory environment is available to I guess, control this. Over to you, Pankaj.
Thank you, Sanjay. Thank you, Ty, for hosting us for this webinar today. I'll just share my screen. And before we begin, good afternoon to all the participants. Thank you for taking out time. We will just have a quick survey to kind of have a profile of the participants, and accordingly, the content of our speech, we will moderate accordingly. So on your screen, you can see the survey. There are two questions. If you could, best fits your profile in terms of business owners, employees, student, freelancers, and have you evaluated the ESR implications onto your group of companies? As the timeline would be 30th of June, which we will discuss in detail in our slides. So we have almost 80% of the participants have voted, and 57% of the participants are business owners and the employees. So we can see a lot of people would be interested in understanding what is the scope of ESR and how it impacts their business. As much as 53% of the participants are yet to evaluate the ESR implications. Thank you for voting. This gives us a very good insight onto how to take it forward. So when we talk about economic substance regulation, in terms of today's presentation, it's divided into 4 sections. We'll understand the scope and the background of the ESR. Then there are certain relevant activities alone on which ESR is applicable. We'll discuss few of them which are fairly common in the UAE as a country. We'll talk about how the ESR will be administered and what are the action points for you, for your group of companies that you need to take. And of course, we will end as a workshop and a Q&A sessions. You can post your questions in the chat window, or we'll also be unmuting and allowing you to ask questions. So allow us to start with a very, very basic, simple illustration to explain you what is the issue in hand globally and why this ESR is a big thing across the globe, all the countries. So take an example, there is a US entity which for a particular year earns a profit of around 2.5 million. And we all know US corporate tax is around 21%. So the company would have ended up paying corporate tax on 2.5 million worth of profit in the US. Considering the regulatory environment in the UAE, it's possible that the company can set up a subsidiary in the UAE and let the UAE subsidiary charge a service charge for say 1 million, which will be allowed as an expense to the US and hence the US company will end up paying tax, corporate tax, only on 1.5 million. We all know in UAE there is no corporate tax, so this entire 1 million would go out of tax net, be it in the UAE or in the US. And this service charges could take any form in terms of management fee, IPR royalty, the group company services, and everything. If you see, the UAE company may or may not have any employees. It can just simply issue a service invoice, and by virtue of which the entire profit of 1 million can be shifted from a taxable jurisdiction to a non-taxable jurisdiction. This is a typical example of what is technically called base erosion and profit shifting. That is, you are shifting a profit from a taxable to a non-taxable jurisdiction. This issue has now been recognized globally as part of OECD BEPS program. More than 130 countries are now cooperating and exchanging information with each other about the entities and the companies in their respective countries and whether they are actually performing some economic activities or they are effectively a one-man or what is called a paper company. In addition to this, if you recall in 2017 and year 2018, European Union has actually issued a list of non-cooperative jurisdictions for tax purposes and which originally included UAE. The reason European Union had given to include UAE as a non-cooperative jurisdiction was that it facilitates offshore structures and arrangement aimed in attracting profit without any real economic substance, something we just demonstrated in the previous slide example illustration. Since UAE is committed to OECD objectives, it introduced economic substance regulation. It's basically the objective of economic substance regulation is that the companies in the UAE undertakes which are taking specific activities are not used to just simply park the profit in UAE as a non-tax jurisdiction without actually having economic activity in the country. There are certain legal documents, regulations which have been issued. We don't have to kind of remember the names of it. The two key points that we like to highlight is it's not UAE alone which has introduced economic substance regulations. Over 12 countries have introduced economic substance regulation as part of this global initiative, which includes Bahrain in terms of GCC, Bahamas, Barbados, BVI. So it's not that a lot of people have this confusion that economic substance regulation is a tax regime. They always ask, what is the impact on us? What is the impact on our profit? ESR is not a taxation regime. It is neither a tax on your profits, nor is it allowing you, or it's a regulatory law in terms of permitting you or prohibiting you from doing any activity. You can continue your business. The only thing the government wants to check is whether you are actually doing a genuine activity with enough number of employee premises, and we'll discuss these in detail. But do not worry that it's not a tax regime. The other question we always been asked is that on which companies or who all are covered if a company is set up in a free zone, and effectively free zones are considered to be outside the jurisdiction and especially for the taxation purposes, is ESR applicable on the free zone companies? Answer is any natural or jurisdictional person licensed by any of the competent authority, which includes the free zone and financial free zone authorities, are indeed covered by ESR. So per se, every company in the UAE, in fact, every licensee is the terminology we should use. Every licensee should examine whether they are doing any of the relevant activity and need to do a ESR compliance. However, please do not take a presumption that merely because you are a free zone company or a financial free zone company and hence ESR would not be applicable on you. The only category of companies which are exempted from ESR are the companies in which 51% or more is held by any of the federal or the Emirates government or any of the UAE government body or authority. Only those companies are excluded from the ESR applicability. Otherwise, again, I'm repeating for the clarity that all free zone, financial free zone, mainland, onshore companies are covered by ESR, and they need to examine whether they are undertaking a relevant activity. Being a licensee, the other thing that you need to check is, are you doing any of the 9 relevant activities? In the course of this webinar, we will discuss some of the common relevant activities which could be of interest to you. If any of these 9, they need to therefore then do the ES. Whether you are doing one of the 9 relevant activities, please just not look at your licensed activity and say we are not doing these activities. The law and the guidance provided by the Ministry of Finance clearly state that they will adopt what is called substance over form approach. In other words, even if your license is not stating that you are doing a particular activity, but actual transaction has been undertaken, then the ES applicability would be there. The third important aspect in terms of applicability is that it's applicable on any financial year starting on or after 1st of January 2019. So any activity that a company might have taken in 2018, 2017 or before is not covered by the ESR. Only financial year starting 1st January 2019 onwards would be covered. So for example, if for a company the financial year is starting from 1st of April 2019, then the period of 1st January 2019 to 31st March 2019 would not be covered under the ESR, and the applicability will start only from 1st of April 2019. So you need which would have a specific clause on what is the financial year for the company, especially for the companies which has recently been formed, with they may or may not have right now prepared their audit reports and the financials, but it is quite possible that they may have the first financial year from say 1st of May or 16th of May to 31st of December. We recently had one of the case with our client where the company was set up in May 2019, and they were assuming that our financial year still not has ended and the ESR is not applicable. But if you look at the memorandum, it says that the first financial year would be from May 2019 to 31st of December 19. So do check that. Now, what are the relevant activities which becomes the core heart of the ESR as to whether we are covered or not? In total, there are 9 activities which have been listed. The first 5 activities appearing on your screen: banking business, insurance business, investment fund management business, shipping, and lease finance are very, very specific in nature. One actually needs to have specific license by the authorities to undertake these activities. So for the purpose of these webinar, we are not covering these 5 activities. What we will discuss in detail is a holding company business, headquarter business, intellectual property business, and most importantly, the distribution and service center business. Just one caution here: in the lease finance business, intercompany leasing or financing in terms of intercompany corporate loans to outside UAE group companies would be covered if it is for a interest bearing loans. Why are we discussing ESR? Why am I taking you through the applicability and the scope of relevant activities? As the licensee, either as the business owner or as the employee managing the business and the company, there are certain action points required from you. First is determine whether the company is doing any of these 9 relevant activities shown on the previous slides. Again, repeating, please adopt substance over form approach. Even if the activity is not mentioned in your license, but the company is actually undertaking it, it will be covered under the relevant activity. If the company is doing the relevant activity, they need to submit the ESR notification. There is a point of controversy I'll take you through a bit later. Most importantly, then you'll have to also demonstrate that the economic substance exists in UAE. If you remember our first slide, if we just have a company without any employees, we cannot show that we had the economic substance to provide the services. And this demonstration of economic substance in the UAE will be provided to the authorities by way of a detailed ESR report, which needs to be submitted for each of the financial year. So ESR is not, that brings to another important point, ESR is not a one-off compliance that you do it today and forget about it. ESR will be your yearly compliance that you'll have to undertake every year. And the authorities have 6 years to basically come back to you and review. So please maintain all your documents for at least 6 years. The first two steps, the determining of whether you are doing the relevant activity and submitting the ESR notification, has to be completed on or before 30th of June, depending on which regulatory authority or licensing authority. Some of the free zone authorities like Dubai South, Dubai Silicon Oasis have specified dates prior to 30th of June by which the ESR notification has to be submitted. The authorities are also taking the view that even if a licensee is not undertaking the relevant activity, they should still submit the ESR notification by stating they are not undertaking the activity. So again, even if the relevant activity is not being undertaken, you still need to submit the ESR notification by specifying that you are actually not doing this activity. The ESR report needs to be submitted by 31st of December 2020. And the most important, as we said, demonstrating the economic substance. And in the subsequent slides, each activity-wise will take you through how to demonstrate the economic substance is being undertaken in UAE or not. Also, as we mentioned, this will be your yearly compliance. So while for financial year 2019, whatever has happened, and you don't have anything to change that. But please make sure in terms of economic substance, you undertake necessary activities in year 2020 so that your future compliances can be sorted. How do we demonstrate the economic substance in UAE? There are essentially two items that we need to demonstrate. One is something called core income generating activities for each of the relevant activity are being actually performed in the UAE. Take for example, if we are into a provision of services to our group companies, do I have enough manpower, skilled manpower to provide those services in the UAE, or am I just creating one paper company whereas all these services are being provided from somewhere else? The second and most important in terms of demonstrating the economic substance is that the entity is being directed and managed in the UAE itself. That is, the entity should not be directed and managed from somewhere outside UAE. And how do we demonstrate? By holding adequate number of board meetings in the UAE. The authorities have still not clarified whether attending a board meeting through a virtual online conference like webinars and all would be a sufficient compliance for year 2019. For 2020, at least for the period of COVID-19, there is a guidance that the authorities may permit the virtual board meetings, but otherwise the board meetings has to happen in the UAE. In terms of number of board meetings, at least one meeting should happen each financial year. And how do we demonstrate that for each of the board meetings, the necessary quorum as specified in your memorandum of association and article of association should be present in the UAE. So if you have minimum quorum of 3 directors to be present, all 3 directors should be in the UAE at the time of board meeting. Please maintain the signed minutes of the meeting, which can be examined by the authorities in the next 6 years. And the attending directors must have the necessary skill and expertise. We have experience in some of the companies, the directors are appointed for the only purpose of whether your directors have the necessary experience and skill to actually execute the business decisions. Relating to this core income generating activities, the guidance also provides that you need to have adequate number of equivalent to full-time employees with the necessary skill to perform any of the relevant activities that may be applicable to you. You need to have necessary or adequate amount of operating expenditure and the premises. Now, if you see in the board minute, number of employees, operating expenditure, physical assets, there is an expression used adequate. And the authorities have clarified that adequacy means that depending on the scale of operation, you will have to have the necessary numbers. So for a company which is having operations, say, worth 100 millions worth of turnover versus a company which just have 5 million worth of turnover, there is no minimum number of employees or minimum number of operating expenditure prescribed. This is where the international experience of the consultant like us would come in handy, where we can demonstrate to you that in a particular set of business environment, this is the minimum number which will be considered as adequate. Now, what are the relevant activities as we've been focusing? We'll focus on activities 6, 7, 8, and 9. We'll first start with activity 9, which is distribution and service center business. As we said, most commonly applicable to most of the businesses. The distribution service center business essentially covered two distinct activities. So either if you are purchasing goods from a foreign connected person, and then you are importing and storing those goods in the UAE, and then you are reselling those goods outside of UAE, then you will be considered as undertaking a distribution business. Bear in mind, this activity, purchasing is from a foreign connected person, then you have to import and store it in the UAE and then resell it outside UAE, relates to goods alone. And the second activity is a service center business, wherein if you are providing services, any services for that matter, to a foreign connected person, which is basically a group company outside UAE, more of a company would either have some sort of a service charge to their group companies, and that those service charges would be covered here. Now, in case a company is doing either the distribution business or a service center business, what are the, as we said, to demonstrate the economic substance, the core income generating activity should happen in the UAE. The law regulations gives us a guidance that the entity which is dealing in goods should be transporting and storing the goods in the UAE. It should be managing the inventories in the UAE. It should be taking the orders in the UAE. And in case of services, it should be providing the consultancy or other services from UAE. Then it will be treated as if the core income generating activities are happening in the UAE. In addition to that, as we discussed, the directed and management, adequate number of employees, operating expenditure, and physical assets should be there in the UAE. Then you don't have to worry. You can simply tell the authorities that, hey, look, even though I'm doing a distribution center business or a service center business, I am satisfying the economic substance. I don't have anything to worry about. Just only the compliance needs to be done. Now, what is a foreign connected person? We always say that only the purchase from a foreign connected person is covered. Purchase from third party or sale from to a foreign connected person is not covered. Similarly, in case of services, supplies to a foreign connected person is covered. The purchase is not covered. So if we demonstrate in terms of graphics, so just to demonstrate the distribution center business, if the UAE company is purchasing the goods from a group company in Singapore and then in turn selling it to a third party customer in the US, it will be treated as if it is conducting the distribution center business, because purchase from a foreign connected person is covered. On the other hand, if the goods are being purchased from an independent supplier, say in Africa, and then is being resold to a group company outside UAE, it will not be covered in the distribution center business. I think the basic purpose is because if you are actually trying to shift profits by inflating the price to the customer, your group company in Australia, you'll end up paying a higher customs duty, which no entity would ever like to do. However, when it comes to services, it is actually not the purchase of services which is covered. So any purchase of services from group company, intercompany charges, management charges, which you pay out to the group company is not covered. On the other hand, your service charges, outward or service charges to a group company, you will be treated as conducting the service center business. This is, as we discussed in the first slide, a typical way to shift profits from one jurisdiction to another, and hence covered under the ESR regulations. Moving on to the next business, which is the headquarter business, something akin to a service center business, wherein if you have a company in UAE which is providing to foreign group companies provision of senior management or assumption and control of material risk. So if you have some key global purchase department sitting in the UAE, or you have a key department, let's say, undertaking the whole amount of marketing activities and the expenditure in the UAE, and then invoicing it to the group companies, those would be covered in the headquarter business. On the other hand, if there is an overlap between the service center business and headquarter business, the law says you will be treated as conducting only one relevant activity. You don't have to comply with both the relevant activities. Again, in terms of same steps, just because I'm doing a headquarter business in terms of providing senior management to my group companies outside, does not mean I'm doing anything wrong. We always keep saying ESR applicability is not a bad news. All you have to make sure is you satisfy the economic substance in the UAE. So what you need to do is you need to have the core income generating activities in the UAE, which basically includes taking all the relevant management decisions, including incurring the operating expenditure and coordinating all group activities from UAE. In which case you need to have again the same test, number of employees, operating expenditure and physical assets needs to be present in the UAE. In addition to which the directed and management test, that is board meetings, minimum one, should happen in the UAE. Please bear in mind that this is covered only if you are providing all these headquarters services to a foreign group company. If there are certain management companies which are managing the businesses absolutely of third parties independently because their expertise is in business management, they would not be covered. It's only the group company relationship which triggers. Second important point is, even though the relevant activity is titled as a headquarter business, does not mean that the UAE company has to be the parent company. The activity, as we always say, substance over form. So whether or not the UAE company is actually on the top of the organizational hierarchy, so long as it is undertaking these business services of providing senior management or incurring the significant risk, they will be covered under the headquarter business, and hence the economic substance compliance will become mandatory. Moving on to third, which is again very typical in the UAE, is a holding company business. Any company or any licensee in the UAE which is holding shares in other companies and primarily earning dividends is covered. Dividends from equitable interest is only covered. But most important for holding company businesses, the entity should not be undertaking any other commercial activity. So if you have, say, company A, which in addition to holding shares in the group companies across the UAE, across the globe, is also providing management services, is also providing some sort of a senior management role, then they will not be treated as conducting a holding company business. Only if a company is created merely to hold the shares and then earn dividend, those would be covered under the holding company business. However, this is a fairly simple activity in terms of regulations. Also, you don't have to undertake a huge substantial compliance if dividend is the only source of income. So long as you are submitting the documents, all the records relating to dividend, and you maintain the adequate number of employees just to manage the shareholding, accounting, and other things, that will be treated as sufficient compliance. The requirement that board meeting should happen in UAE, the quorum should be present in UAE, is not required in the case the company's only income is the dividend and there is no other commercial activity. The fourth activity which we'll discuss in today's, and for the paucity of time, we'll just go a little bit fast to come on the Q&A session, is the intellectual property business, which is simply statement is any business which holds, exploits, or receive income from intellectual property asset, which includes copyright, trademark, brand, technological know-how, everything could be treated as an IPR. If you notice one critical thing in the definition, this definition does not use the expression foreign connected person. So long there is a business in the UAE which is holding an IPR and which is either transferring or licensing the IPR to third parties, be it in the UAE or outside UAE, then it will be treated as conducting the IPR business. Group company is not a mandatory requirement for an IPR business. Additionally, there is a clarification that even the softwares are IPR as part of the patented, equivalent to patented and copyrights. So let us say a company which is dealing in softwares, which holds the rights in the software to license it or transfer it further, will be considered as undertaking the relevant activity of IPR business. Having said so, then they'll need to basically demonstrate the economic substance in the UAE. So for patents, they need to show that the research and development has happened in the UAE. It is not the case that somebody else has done the research and development outside UAE, and I simply hold that patent, because that's how globally companies try to maneuver their profit from one jurisdiction to another. That the real activity happens in one country, but the owner is made to sit in another country. In case of other than patents, the entire activity of branding, marketing, and distribution should happen from UAE. Then you will be treated as undertaking the necessary economic substance in the UAE, and you don't have to worry accordingly. Additionally, the same, just at the cost of repetition, the other test of having a minimum number of board meetings in the UAE, number of employees, premises, and expense should also be satisfied. Bear in mind, when we talk about IPR business, this is then further classified into what is called high-risk intellectual property business. So one, we talked about a simple exploitation of an IPR by way of either transfer or licensing. But in case you are doing certain more activities, you will be tagged as a high-risk IP. What is a high-risk IP? In case the licensee did not create a IPR themselves, you acquired this IPR from a connected person, that is a group company, or in consideration of funding and research by any other person outside UAE. So being an entity, you funded a research and development project in the US, the IPR got created, and now you are holding it in the UAE to further sub-license it. And the licensee gives this to one or more connected person and generate income. Then the law says you are a high-risk IP and you need to undertake additional compliances. What is this example we are talking about? Let us say, I'll take an example, just company A, without using any brand name. Company A is into a business of software. They have a whole team sitting in the US, which basically do all the research and development and create the IPR. And now, having created the IPR, ideally, once the licensing of this IPR starts from the US would have got the corporate tax. But what the corporate group structure does it, instead of keeping the IPR in the US, they sell this IPR to a group company in a connected person in the UAE, which in turns then gives it back to other group companies across the globe. So what happens is the US company sold this IPR at a particular value to a UAE company, and UAE company in turn sells this IPR at a higher value to all the group companies by keeping the profit in the UAE. This is exactly what the government wants to curb. Scenario B, if you are not carrying out any research and development or branding activity, so effectively meaning if you are not satisfying the economic substance in relation to the IPR business, you will be tagged as a high-risk IP. Why is it actually concerning if somebody is tagged as a high-risk IP? Because you'll have to undertake additional core income generating activities in terms of taking the strategic decisions. You need to demonstrate that all these decisions were actually undertaken in the UAE. Sorry, I'm using a lot of technical jargons, but just for the comprehensive coverage, we are using these what is provided, and the details of it can be discussed in details in another session. And in addition to this, all your information we'll discuss in the subsequent slide will be transferred to the tax authorities of your parent company or the beneficial owner companies. So why is ESR important in terms of when we talked about ESR per se is not a taxation regime. ESR does not mean that you are prohibited from doing activity. You can satisfy the economic substance, and hence that's the good compliance so long as you are demonstrating the economic substance. The amount of penalties are quite huge in terms of thing. Just for the positive time, I'm skipping this slide. I'll come back on it a bit later. Now, if you fail, as we discussed in the stepwise approach, the first is to check whether you are doing any of the relevant activity and submit a ESR notification to the regulatory authority. If you fail to submit the ESR notification, there is a penalty ranging from 10,000 dirhams to 50,000 dirham. And even if you are submitting the ESR notification, however, you are providing incomplete or inaccurate information, there is a financial penalty of 10,000 to 50,000 dirham. Plus, the information about your company would be provided to the tax authorities of your parent companies or the beneficial owners, so that those tax authorities can then cross question the respective parent company as to why do you have a company in the UAE and what is the purpose of and the activities undertaken there. Further, as we talked about, if a company or a licensee is undertaking any of the 9 relevant activities, they need to demonstrate that they do have the economic substance in terms of board meetings, number of employees, the indicative activities being performed in the UAE. If the licensee is not able to demonstrate the economic substance in the UAE, for the first financial year, which is year 2019, the financial penalties are relatively less because we'll come on the subsequent penalties. It's ranging from 10,000 to 50,000 dirhams, plus the sharing of information with the foreign tax authorities. However, if a company or a licensee continues to fail on the economic substance, in other words, if a company without actually having economic substance and the owners continue to operate the company, from the next financial year onwards, the penalties will range. It will increase from 10,000 to 100,000 to 300,000, plus of course the exchange of information from the foreign tax authorities. And also, that is from the second year onward, a possible suspension, revocation, or non-renewal of your trade license. So effectively, the authorities can say that you'll have to stop your business because you're not meeting the economic substance. This is why the entire economic substance regulation compliance, provision of correct and accurate information becomes very, very important. So who are the authorities to whom we have to submit this ESR notification? Now, it is not a single authority as a Ministry of Finance, all the licensees have to approach. For each of the relevant activities, different regulatory authorities have been notified. So for banking and lease finance, Central Bank has been notified. Insurance, against different authorities have been specified. If you notice the last two lines, for your financial free zones and the free zones, the respective free zone authorities have been notified as the regulatory authorities. And similarly, the Ministry of Economy has been notified as the regulatory authorities for onshore companies across all these 7 emirates. So you have to check whether your regulatory authorities have already specified the timeline for submission of ESR notification. If we talk about the timelines, as we are on 8th of June, 2 of the timelines have already passed by, which is for Silicon Oasis and Dubai South. The timeline was 31st of May and 7th of June respectively. And for all other, especially under Dubai Development Authority, so many zones gets covered. The timeline is 25th of June and not 30th of June. And for Department of Economy, which is the mainland companies across all 7 Emirates, the timeline is 30th of June. On the second table, if you see the last bullet, JAFZA have not yet notified the timeline. However, as Ministry of Economy is a kind of overpowering authority, in case a specific notification is not issued, 30th June may still remain a valid timeline for submission of the ESR notification. As we discussed in the penalties, even if you provide inaccurate or incomplete details, a possible penalty can still be imposed. Now, what do we actually provide in the ESR notification? It's a simple form wherein we just answer these 3 questions on the right side. 1, whether or not we are undertaking a relevant activity. And if we are undertaking a relevant activity, whether we earned some income in the financial year, and if any of the income was taxed in any of the foreign jurisdiction, and the date of the financial year ending. If you look at clause A, it's worded like whether or not the licensee is carrying on a relevant activity. Very often we have received these queries from a lot of clients and companies that, hey, look, I have examined ESR, or we have examined the ESR for them and come to a conclusion that they are not undertaking a relevant activity. And then the question comes, do I still need to submit the notification to the authorities? The law says one has to notify whether or not they are undertaking the relevant activity, and hence the approach should be that even if you are not undertaking the relevant activity, still notify the authority by stating that no, we are not undertaking the relevant activity. In terms of the detailed ESR report, which needs to be submitted in case you are indeed undertaking the relevant activity, which needs to be submitted, these are the type of information that will be asked. While the template has still not been notified by the Ministry of Finance, but if you look at point number 5, 6, you also need to specify number of employees, their qualifications, probably the timesheets, whether they were actually present in the UAE, how you have been undertaking the core income generating activities, of course, what we discussed, minutes of the board meetings, possibly the travel records of the directors that they were actually present in the UAE. All these records needs to be demonstrated. As we said, whatever happened in 2019 happened. Nobody can change that. But these being a yearly compliance, please make sure that you maintain all these information for year 2020 in case you are doing the relevant activity. This is just an appeal process. We can skip it. We have covered the penalties. So in terms of action points, as we said, use the substance over form approach to check whether you are undertaking the relevant activity and if you're earning the income. For 2020 at least, make sure the board meetings are being happening in the UAE. Please ask your directors, check the experience and the knowledge of the directors vis-a-vis the particular activity you are undertaking. Ask the directors to hold the board meetings in the UAE, at least in the absence of any clarification whether virtual meeting would be allowed post COVID-19 time, and make sure all the board minutes are signed and adequately maintained. Also, all your operating expenditure in terms of the activity have a full records, documents, the purchase, invoice copies and everything that should be maintained. Very, very important is your robust contracts in terms of what you are providing. Just to give an example, we talked about IPR business, that exploitation of IPR is a relevant activity. So if I'm licensing software or if I'm selling a software, it may be covered under IPR activity. However, development of software services to third parties may, again I'm using the word may, development of software for third parties may not be treated as exploitation of IPR, but a pure software development services, and hence not covered under the relevant activity. So how your contract is worded with your customers, with your foreign group companies, you need to check to make sure whether ESR compliance is required or not. Again, just repeating in terms of the full-time employees, their qualifications, what are their responsibility metrics, all these things needs to be done. With this, we come to the conclusion of the coverage of the ESR, and it's a basic overview that we have tried to provide. This is indeed not a comprehensive view of all the relevant activities, but the floor is now open for the questions, and people can. Sanjay, back to you for moderation of Q&A session.
Thank you very much, Pankaj. This was very informative and quite a lot of information. The key thing I took back is regardless of what you do, you still have to submit your ESR to your authorities, and this is including the mainland companies. You mentioned all 7 Emirates require this to be submitted.
Yes.
We've got quite a few questions, but I will just take a few on. This is from Mr. Krishnan Unni. We are a manufacturer of proprietary range of IT products. Trade license states trading, but substance is manufacturing. Constituted as a mainland company, all employees, board meeting, assets boards are all located in the UAE. Are all CIGA's composite income generating activities are conducted in the UAE? We purchase products from unrelated suppliers in China. What would be the compliance required under ESR, if any?
So in terms of the facts provided, if all the purchases are from unrelated parties, the distribution center business would not be covered, because it's only if you're purchasing from a group company. The very fact that you have employees manufacturing activities in the UAE shows that you indeed have the economic substance in the UAE. So at least on the distribution center business, you would not be covered. What I heard is you are saying IT products and not IT software. So IPR business may also not be covered. Just check whether the service center business, if you are actually part of some global group or you have some subsidiaries outside UAE, in case you are issuing any sort of a service invoice or a service charge to a group company outside UAE, then your service center business could be applicable.
Okay. The next one is a question from Christine Orth. Is providing company formation services to outside investors considered ESR activity? How can FlexiDesk license holder demonstrate ESR? One visa, just no physical office.
So 2 things. One, FlexiDesk visa holder does not basically mean that you do not have the adequate premises. The premises and the number of employees will be checked again as the expression where we use adequacy, which is very, very subjective to a lot of factors in terms of size of operations and other things. So a FlexiDesk does not necessarily mean that you do not have the economic substance. In terms of investment advisory or providing information about the country, how to set up companies, if it's with unrelated parties, it's not covered under the ESR.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Pankaj. Thank you so much. It's been an exceptional. In fact, I wanted to ask a question. That's why I raised my hand. Thank you very much for taking the time. I just wanted to ask you a question. Like all through the presentation, you've talked about group companies. Yeah. You know, if there is a hands-off relationship, how do you define a group company in this case?
So group company has been, by definition, says that any company which either we have or somebody else is having a control or ownership. Interestingly enough, the regulations do not define the extent of the ownership. So as of now, there is no threshold that if I am a company and there is a company, 10% of the shares are held by me, does it become a group company? So again, being a substance over form approach, our position right now is so long as there is a common shareholding or in terms of vertical shareholding or shareholding, it will be treated as a
if I have a single share, it will still constitute legally a group company. Now that is pretty onerous, correct? I could have one share of Apple and be a distributor of Apple products, for example.
I completely agree. So again, I'll repeat. So the definition may not be onerous because it's more the interpretation of the definition that we are taking right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm pretty sure that sooner or later, Ministry of Finance will clarify this percentage holding that needs to be there.
Mm-hmm. Because that is pretty difficult to kind of explain. Also, the other thing was like, if you cannot like kind of have a prima facie link between the two companies, then in that case it becomes a third example where you're buying it from a third party, for example,
Yes,
and or billing to a third party. Correct?
absolutely.
Correct. Thank you so much, Pankaj. It's been an exceptional session, and thank you very much for taking the time for sharing your knowledge with the TiE members and TiE guests on this webinar. Would anybody else have another question, Sanjay? Otherwise, I'd like to thank Pankaj for his time, and hopefully we'll have another enlightening session from you
I think I'd like to try to do maybe one or two more real quick. Just a second, I'm trying to find the one that I was looking for. Yeah, so if goods are not coming into the UAE, but going directly, so third country movements, Pankaj.
Yes.
So it's going from, let's say, Singapore to the US, but all the invoicing and everything else is happening out of the UAE. What would the ESR application be there in this case?
So that's a very, very interesting question because the definition, so allow me just to get slightly technical in the explanation. The distribution center business definitely needs that the goods should be imported and stored in the UAE and then re-exported or resold outside UAE, that it will be a distribution center business. So if I'm having, let's say, company A in Australia directly shipping the goods to a customer in the US, the distribution center business may not get covered. But what's more important is, again, using the expression substance over form. So if the UAE company is actually not having adequate number of people, operations to say that we were genuinely purchasing the goods and selling the goods to the US customer, and the shipment was just simply being directed for convenience, the company may get covered under what is called service center business. To say that I'm not doing a genuine purchase sale transaction, I'm effectively providing services to my office and making the sale happen. So the substance over form is a very, very subjective thing to interpret in this case.
The one last one, a Dubai mainland entity providing bulk recruitment support to our clients in the UAE, while billing the agents overseas for providing manpower to India, Pakistan, Nepal. Do we come under service center business?
Could you please repeat the question once more, please?
Okay, a Dubai mainland entity
Yeah.
providing bulk recruitment support to clients in the UAE.
Okay.
While billing the agents overseas for providing manpower from India, Pakistan, and Nepal, do we come under service center business? So I think this is inward billing, not outward billing.
Yeah, it's an inward billing. So inward billing of services is anyway not covered.
Correct.
And I'm assuming there would not be group companies who are billing anyway.
Correct. Well, we do have a lot more questions, and I think we can probably pass on Pankaj's contact information so that those they can be passed on to you. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Pankaj for all the time and effort. This was a very interesting presentation, and even though a lot of us think it doesn't apply to us, but clearly it applies to every here in the UAE. Once again, on the behalf of TiE, thank you very much, and thank you to all the attendees for joining us. Have a good day ahead. Stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you so much once again. Thank you to all the participants and TiE Group. Thank you.